Introduction.
Hi, my name is Abby. I'm with the Friends Committee on National Legislation. You might be raining outside, but we just consider that the blessings that are raining upon us. We're here today to call on Congress not to leave for the year without expanding the child tax credit. Today marks the one-year anniversary of when the last expanded CTC check went out. For many of us, this is a season of miracles. The miracle of Jesus' birth, the miracle of Hanukkah. But expanding the CTC, that shouldn't take a miracle. That's straightforward common sense. And there's a way to get it done now. Today, you will hear from a diverse set of faith leaders, impacted people, and members of Congress, all united by a simple belief that we can end poverty now by expanding the CTC. Every speaker here is only speaking for themselves and their own organization. Our first speaker is Rabbi Jonah Pesner, who will lead us in a prayer.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Rabbi Jonah Pesner, the director of the Religious Action Center and the Union for Reform Judaism, the largest and most diverse denomination in Jewish life. I'm a rabbi in part because when my father died suddenly when I was a child, my single working mother, my brother and I were cared for by our rabbis and our Jewish community. But we also survived that tragedy, and we even thrived because we lived in affordable housing, we attended safe, funded public schools, and we received federal assistance for higher education. I know personally the role that society and government plays in protecting our children. So it is my honor to open this gathering with words of prayer and scripture. Though like many of you, it fills me with regret and shame that we must gather today. Perhaps the falling rain are the tears from the heavens above, crying out and weeping, "Why have you forsaken my children?" Your children. Psalm 37 records an aspirational claim. "I was young and now I'm old, and never have I seen a righteous person forsaken, nor their child begging for food." How can we live in a time when millions of children beg for their bread? Across the globe, to be sure, but right here in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, and across our entire country, perhaps the richest nation in human history, shame. Had our nation and its leaders not heard the suffering, had they turned their back, had they ignored, then that would have been bad enough. But they saw, and they heard the voices crying out of the children begging for their bread, and they acted with the American Rescue Plan of 2021, in which Congress temporarily expanded the child tax credit, lifting more than 5 million people, nearly 3 million children out of poverty. And 1 year ago today, the last child tax credit payments were delivered to families. And 3 million children slipped back into hunger and poverty and suffering. Chatanu lefanecha, we have sinned before you, O God. Chatanu lifnei yaldeinu, we have sinned before our children. God, forgive us. There is a powerful midrash, a legend in the Jewish tradition, that when God offered the Torah to the Jewish people standing at Sinai, these foundational 5 books of Moses that became the basis of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and so many world religions that would inspire generations across lines, that God wouldn't give this book to the ancestors until they shared who would be the guarantors of the tradition. And the elders debated and discussed, and they said, our matriarchs and our patriarchs will be the guarantors. And God said no. And the elders debated and discussed, and they said, our prophets will be our guarantors. And God said no. And during the long, awkward silence, there was the cry of a baby, to which the elders said, our children will be our guarantors. And it was then that God gave the gift of revelation to our people. Eloheinu ve'Elotei Avotenu v'Imotenu, God who is the God of our mothers and our fathers, God who is the God of our children and our children's children, God of the generations yet to come, forgive us this year of suffering of our children. Agitate us, lest we continue to ignore their pleas. Inspire us to hold our leaders accountable and demand they hear the cry. Amen. It is an honor to invite a true champion for children, a fighter who helped win the child tax credit and continues in that fight and has devoted her entire public life to lifting people out of poverty, Representative Rosa DeLauro.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you for the Religious Action Center. Thank you for always being, so powerful and for being there in all of the most serious challenges that this country faces and being on the right side of those challenges. And thank you for your generous introduction and your tireless advocacy for social justice. I'll recognize my colleague from the Senate, Senator Sherrod Brown. And what an honor it is to be with Sherrod. We've been joined at the hip on this issue for I don't know how long, Sherrod, but here we are. And there are 4 more of us, in which I've dubbed the CTC 6, Congresswoman Susan DelBene, Congressman Richie Torres, and Senators Cory Booker and Senator Bennett. So we have been working and will continue to work and fight for as long as we have to. For the child tax credit. The advocates who are here, the activists who are here, and particularly Perla Silva, who will be talking about her own personal story and what the child tax credit has meant to herself and to her family. And I thank all of the faith leaders here today. This is a powerful statement. Please understand how powerful it is and your presence here today. And it is about ending child poverty now. And I'll say it now, and I will say it at the end of my remarks. We need you now, right now, to mobilize your networks, to get on the phone, to bang on the doors, and that is in the United States Senate and at the White House. I'm asking you, please mobilize in short order to tell them about your feelings about the child tax credit and what it is that we need to do. I'm so proud myself of being part of a living Catholic tradition, a tradition that unfailingly promotes the common good, expresses a consistent moral framework for life, highlights the need to provide a collective safety net for our communities most vulnerable. And that includes our children, as the rabbi said, that crying voice of a baby. I have long believed that our role as legislators is to advance respect for life and the dignity of every human being, and that government has a moral purpose and a moral responsibility. So I've been honored to fight side by side with all of you to secure the expanded and the improved child tax credit, groundbreaking, transformative policy. We've been in the fight for 20 years, and it's finally at a moment when we can look at this and say, it is within our reach. It is within our reach. We were so proud and pleased that the Biden administration included the child tax credit in the American Rescue Plan, the largest tax cut for working families in generations, a lifeline to the middle class. Expanding and improving the child tax credit drove the largest decrease in child poverty in history. It helped families to make ends meet. It was the difference of whether someone could pay their light bill that month, fill their gas tanks, pay for childcare, so that they could go to work, to pay a mortgage payment, a rent payment. They needed to be able to put healthy food on the table. It reached more than 61 million children, lifted 4 million out of poverty, and led to a 26% decline in hunger with families who have children. The senator will repeat this because it bears repeating, that we spent a lot of time working on federal programs. and looking at what they are and what their consequences are and who are the beneficiaries. I don't believe there has been another federal program that has met its goal and its purpose in such a short period of time. It has made the difference that we thought it would make when it was introduced. And it is so incredible to believe that today, December 15th, is the last moment that folks will now have the benefit of this tax credit. And my belief is that therefore, because of its success, there is no reason to alter it, to water it down, or to weaken it. Why? Why should we do that with a program that works? We live with all kinds of programs here. Some of them haven't worked for years. And we continue to keep funding them. That's wrong, but it's right for us to be there for programs like the child tax credit that work. People are struggling today. They need our help. There's no soundbite to say that people live paycheck to paycheck. They do that. Extending the improved child tax credit provides families with the support to navigate these challenging times. This is the bottom line. Working families did not abuse this benefit as others would have had to believe that they would. The demeaning of hard-working American families. The child tax credit supported workers, helped them get back to work. They used it to ensure their families were not just surviving, but thriving. Now that the expanded child tax credit has lapsed and the costs are rising, families are counting on us to extend that expansion once more. So our goal is to ensure that by the end of the year, families will be able to use the expanded monthly child tax credit to help meet their most basic needs. Together, I believe we can get this done. Our ask is clear. No R&D, no research and development tax credits without the child tax credit. So no R&D without the CTC. We're coming to the end of the year. There is the clamor for tax cuts, for credits, for benefits for the largest corporations, for some who pay no taxes at all. Some of these corporations. Our ask is simple. If we can provide tax cuts for America's corporations, we can certainly provide a tax cut for America's kids. You have my word? I'm going to fight like hell if this is done. And I want you, sorry for the, you know. I could have said something worse, but I didn't, I want you to remember, Congress is an institution that responds to external pressure. You are the external pressure. Please use all of your energy, your time, mobilizing your folks to get them to call in, overwhelm the Senate, sorry, Sharon, overwhelm and overwhelm the White House.
Yes.
And let them know that there is no weakening of the child tax credit. Make those voices heard. Do not take no for an answer. My mom, who passed away 5 years ago, taught me many things, but two very important principles. Don't take no for an answer and never give up. And that's what you are all about. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the jobs that you are and taking on the missions that you have. You don't give up and you don't take no for an answer. This is our moment. So I want to thank you. Thank you for coming out today in the pouring rain, for joining us in this fight. And we need that unified voice so that we can finally end child poverty now. And it is for me the greatest of pleasure to introduce you someone who I served with in the House of Representatives. Also went to school in New Haven, Connecticut. At a premier institution. So, but someone whose heart, his commitment is in understanding what goes on in the lives of families today. He walks in their shoes, and therefore he can stand and stand tall and be for something like the child tax credit, because he understands and knows what it means. I am so proud to stand with my colleague, Sharon Brown.
I mean, there's no advocate in this country, in this Senate, in the House like Rosa DeLore. She's been doing this 20 years on this issue. I'm a newcomer. I've only worked with her for 10 of these on this. And I'll never forget on March 6th, 2021, sitting next to Senator Casey on the Senate floor. And we've been voting for 13 hours twice. We broke both, we kept Republicans from taking out in 51-50 votes on the child tax credit to pass it and to keep it in. And Rosa, this would never have happened without Rosa and without the groups back here. So thank you. And I appreciate you so much and appreciate results and appreciate Bread for the World. My mother was a Bread for the World activist at a little conservative Lutheran church in Mansfield, Ohio, who would twice a year would pass the plate and people who probably barely knew what they were doing to do this, but advocate for fighting on it. So thank you. I won't be long. I've got a vote that I should have probably left a couple minutes ago, but this is just too important. I thank you for this gathering of faith leaders and the work they do on justice, conservative, liberal alike, understand the role of faith in our country and in our lives. I want to tell one real quick story. When Matthew 25, most of you are familiar with, even if you're not Christians, you probably still are. Matthew 25, when Jesus said, "I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was in jail, you visited me. What you did for the least of these, you did for me." And for years, I read that Bible passage in all versions of the Bible, and it always struck me that Jesus, nor Maimonides, nor Buddha, nor Mohammed would have said that you're worth less than he is, or you're worth more than she is. And I came across a pastor friend of my wife's, Jackie and Kate, are two of our best friends. Jackie was a UCC, as a retired UCC pastor, and she gave me the Poverty and Justice Bible in different translation. It goes like this: when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was in jail, you visited me. What you did for those who seemed less important, you did for me. And it's so clear that's our calling. And Rosa explained it so very well. That in my state alone, 92% of Ohio families will benefit, all but the wealthiest 10% of children's families. It's 2 million children in my state benefit from this. It cut child poverty nearly in half. We know that bill passed March 6th, went to the White House, signed by the president. Rose and I immediately called Janet Yellen, Secretary Yellen. She designated the IRS commissioner and got it up and running. By mid-July, people were getting checks, and by the fall, poverty rates were plummeting. And you can just imagine, if this were still in effect, how this $250 or $300 a month, depending on the age of your child, up through 17, that $250 and $300 per child per month, how it would have blunted the effects of inflation for millions and millions and millions of families. And that's the call to action for me, that there's nothing more important here than doing this. And as Rosa said, I hope Republican colleagues are listening. We'll fix R&D, we'll fix the other corporate tax issues from the 2017 tax law, but only if we expand child tax credit or income tax credit. That's the deal. It's on the table. We offer it. Republicans say yes. It goes to the president. We sign it. We again, long-term, drop the poverty rate among children. So this is our goal. This is our mission. It can happen. We're gonna, if I can quote Rosa, we're gonna fight like hell to make sure it happens. Thank you all.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bella Silva. I am a community organizer in New York. I came all the way over here to share a little bit of my story, but of course, because I love to share the work that I do, and I represent a lot of the stories in our communities. I'm a single parent of a beautiful 9-year-old daughter. This the child tax credit has helped my family in particular so much. After I lost my mother, my father became unemployed, and it was just the two of us. Being the only income in my household, it was able to help me provide for my child, and of course my father, through the recovery and everything. And then I had to get it together and make sure we were out there and helping the community. And I know personally it helped me so much. I was able to provide the food and a way to pay our rent, that living in New York is expensive. Sorry, it's expensive as hell. And every time I say hell, it's just unfair that as a taxpayer we have to fight for this. It helps so many of us, and we deserve a voice. We deserve as taxpayers to say how we should how our taxes should be distributed, where our money should go, and we have a say in that. It's our money. We pay those taxes. We have a right to that. Our children have a say to that. In our community, was benefiting from it, extremely happy. They were able to provide the food, still couldn't make ends meet, paycheck to paycheck, and this helped so many of us. It just means a lot for us to continue to have this support for our communities, and it's extremely helpful. I'm so thankful for all of the work that everyone here is doing, and we and the community, we are so thankful for this fight. We really appreciate it, and we want to make sure that child tax credit will continue to support many of us, as we know that we're still dealing with COVID, we're still dealing with unemployment, and many of our community members can continue to support their families with this. Having a child in a public system school and then still having to pay for lunch is insane. As she is a US citizen, and then she still has to have her undocumented parent provide for homeschools because the school will charge me for lunch is insane. It's unbelievable that we live in one of the richest countries in this world, and we have to put our children in a situation where we have to make ends meet, and how am I going to feed my child? And picky eaters, like, I don't have the money to provide lunch for you every day, but you can take school lunch, but I'm still going to pay for that is insane. I really appreciate the invite. I know that many of the community members wish that they could be here in spaces, and we really appreciate having our voices being heard in these spaces. So it really means a lot. Thank you so much. And sorry, one last thing. We just think it's very important if the billionaires can have a say, what they get to say with their taxes. Us as low income, hard working families, we deserve to have a say for what our taxes, where our taxes should go. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm Reverend Eugene Cho, and I serve as the president at Bread for the World, a nonpartisan Christian advocacy organization comprised of 300,000 members and advocates around the country. As a former pastor of a local church for 30 years, all of these conversations of hell is making me really nervous. But it is an important time for all of us to speak up. For every single person that's here, every person that might be online watching this right now. And when you ask the question, why should we be speaking up? I can think of 12 million reasons. 12 million reasons. What if I told you, for those that might not know, that we live in the wealthiest nation in the world, and yet 12 million of our younger neighbors in our nation are struggling with hunger. Regardless of what one's political inclination may be, we should all shout, "This is unacceptable." And what if I told you that it doesn't have to be this way? It does not have to be this way. That while we can acknowledge that hunger and poverty are complex, there are real pragmatic solutions. What if I told you that churches and mosques and congregations, faith communities from all over are doing what we can, but we cannot do it alone. We need the administration and Congress, we need leadership in our country to do its part. Now, what if I told you that as part of the solution is to make permanent the child tax credit? And here's why. This is not theoretical. It's not misinformation. It's not a left or right agenda. We know that hunger impacts everyone. It impacts every children. We have evidence because the expanded CTC, it cut childhood hunger in the United States by 24% before it expired at the end of 2021. Hard evidence. We also know that when it ended, according to research, hunger in families increased by 25% in 2022. Friends, it's very simple. The childhood tax credit reduces hunger, abolishing it, reducing it, eliminating it, increases hunger. And we know that because of the ongoing effects of COVID, the challenges of inflation, rising costs, this is a real problem right now. Making the monthly payments permanent has the capacity to reduce childhood hunger by nearly 50%. You're going to hear many of our speakers say this again and again because it's not theoretical. It has the capacity to reduce childhood hunger by nearly 50% and lift 3 million children out of poverty in this nation. I'm going to say it again for those in the back. 3 million children out of poverty. This is tremendous good news. During a time of concern in our nation about the polarization of our country, I want to take a moment to thank the leaders that come from all of the parties. The Democrats, the Republicans, the independents, the administration. And we need people in our nation to know that, yes, we can have spirited, robust conversations and debates about critical policy, but we also need our leaders to be able to work together for the common good.
Amen.
So again, as I conclude, I just want people to know, surely every single one of us, we believe that every child matters. Surely all of us believe that every child deserves food and nutrition to be able to flourish in their lives. That every child deserves dignity. So I want to thank members of Congress and the administration for having these conversations, but it is time to stop talking and take action.
Amen.
Friends, 12 million reasons why this is the right thing to do. 12 million reasons. End child poverty. Thank you.
Amen.
I'm not really vote on, but you know where my heart is, you know what I want to do, and some really are going to be just talk about all of the groups that are represented here. This is the heart and soul of the faith community, and you have standing. You can help us to make a difference as you always have in the past. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Dora, and all the speakers. I'm Galen Carey, Vice President of Government Relations with the National Association of Evangelicals. We're the nation's largest and most diverse network of evangelical Christian denominations, schools, ministries, charities, and networks. Among our commitments are safeguarding the sanctity of human life, strengthening marriages, families, and children, and seeking justice and compassion for the poor and vulnerable. The child tax credit helps to advance each of these three important commitments. Children and families are fundamental to God's plan for a flourishing humanity. Our nation's tax code has long recognized the important contribution and investment that parents make in raising the next generation. Over the years, both Republicans and Democrats, as you've heard, have proposed and secured important improvements in the child tax credit, which stands as one of our nation's significant pro-family public policy achievements. Now, in these final days of the 117th Congress, our leaders have the opportunity to build on the past successes by including key improvements to the credit in the omnibus appropriations package that will soon become law. But this sterling pro-family, pro-life, pro-opportunity bipartisan success story will only be realized if Republicans and Democrats come together to prioritize our families in the year-end tax package. If Congress fails to act, many families will see a significant increase in their 2022 taxes compared to 2021. The higher tax bill will compound the challenges posed by higher costs for food, rent, and other essentials. The number of children living in poverty will rise substantially, dimming the futures of countless girls and boys. This would be an unforced error with far-reaching consequences. The child tax credit is a smart investment in our nation's future, one that pays dividends now and for years to come. When compared to other public policy options for supporting families, the child tax credit is elegant in its simplicity. The child tax credit is a tax cut for families that simply and directly puts resources in the hands of parents who know best what their families need. For those who are concerned about the sanctity of human life and protecting the unborn, the child tax credit provides welcome reassurance to expectant moms and dads who wonder if they could afford to raise a child. It tells them that they're not alone, and that if they choose life, they will not have to shoulder the costs and burdens of parenting on their own. Of course, parents need more than extra cash to successfully raise a child to adulthood. They need a community that surrounds them with love and support. And that's what churches do, and that's what we will continue to do. So we hope every family will discover the benefit of a supportive faith community as they embark on the journey of parenting. And we call on every member of Congress to continue the child tax credit success story by improving and increasing the credit and making sure that the families with the greatest need receive it. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Thomas, and I live in Bristow, Virginia. I am the mother of 4 children and a member of Mormon Women for Ethical Government. I'm here today to share with you how the child tax credit has helped my family and why I believe this bipartisan policy helps so many other hardworking American families as well. My husband and I chose to start a family in our early 20s. When our first daughter was born, he was just finishing his bachelor's degree, and I was in my second year of teaching elementary school. 6 months after her birth, we moved across the country so my husband could get a master's degree. I chose to stay at home to raise our daughter, and over the next 7 years, we would add 3 more children to our family while my husband worked and went to school to get a doctoral degree. Family-friendly policies such as the child tax credit played an essential role in our ability to follow this path. We worked hard to be self-sufficient, and money was always tight, but those children were worth the sacrifice. Now, our lives are much more comfortable, but I want to ensure that other children are able to have their basic needs met, or basic needs and wants met by their parents. I support public policy that both encourages people to have children and then helps with their care, especially during this time of financial uncertainty and hardships for many. As a woman of faith, I am guided by the scriptures as I consider which policies will allow the largest number of God's children to thrive and have self-determination and opportunities. In Leviticus, God commands, "And when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shall you gather the gleanings of the harvest." Later in the book of Ruth, we read the story of a woman trying to care for her family who was fed because people had followed that commandment. Ruth is allowed to glean the remnants of the harvest in a good man's field. When she thanks him for allowing her to gather food, he acknowledges that what he has is from God, and so he chooses to share a full reward. As believers in a God who loves all children, we should try to ensure that all families can enjoy a full reward. The child tax credit leaves just a little more of the harvest for parents to glean for their children. Parents who are working hard and need just a little extra, the last grain from the corner of the good man's field. This kind of generosity is good for the economy. We know that the dollars distributed through tax credits are spent quickly on necessities and flow back into the economy. Studies show that parents who receive this credit continue to work hard and their children, able to attend school with full bellies, graduate high school at higher rates. Generosity is a bipartisan virtue. Ever since the child tax credit was recommended by a Reagan-era commission and implemented under the Clinton administration, it has been improved and increased by every president, regardless of his political party or who controlled Congress. We all want families and children to thrive and reap the rewards of their labor. I am grateful for the opportunities it has given my family, and I'm here today to advocate for a fully refundable child tax credit so that other families will benefit as well.
My name is James Lee, and I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm in a little bit of pain right now, so if I squirm a little bit, I ask for your forgiveness. I live with a housemate. She has 5 girls, one with autism and one with a Z2. And what I saw when she was receiving the child tax credit payments, I saw a big benefit for her because she was able to pay for those things that the gentleman mentioned earlier that people are paying for. They're paying for increased rent, they're paying for mobility with vehicles and stuff like that, and they're paying for utilities. So it kind of like enabled her to catch up. Those payments enabled her to catch up in her life. 'Cause when I moved in with her 4 years ago, she was in a different situation, so that I saw the payments really benefit her and her 5 girls. Now, when those payments stopped, and I'm gonna give you an analogy, when those payments stopped, it was like somebody came up to her family car and just punctured a hole in it. Now you got a hole in the tire, and now you can't. So I saw her financially struggle. And it really hurt me. And these stories that I'm hearing here is kind of making me emotional because I'm going back to seeing her all those times that I saw her at night and I heard her crying in the bathroom, because she's struggling so much, and I'm seeing this, and it's like it's affecting me too, and I do what I can to help. We should live in shared living because as everybody knows, it's expensive to live in America, and especially in Charlotte, North Carolina, it's very expensive. And I couldn't live on my own, nor could she, so we live in a shared housing situation, so I do what I can to help. But even with that help, it's still not enough. It's still not enough, right? So these payments really benefited her a lot. And I got a chance to see her, like was said earlier, she spent the money on the good things. And one of the things we take for granted is that with her 5 girls, she was able to go out on the occasional family trip to the park, have the occasional take out dinner where she don't have to cook. Those things that we take for granted, right? And this family, I'm seeing this family experience it, but what was some of the things that she had, that was some of the stuff that she had to give up when those payments stopped. And so the question is, if Congress restates this and expands it, what's gonna be the improvement for her life? And I'll give you the final part of that analogy. It's like, we come and we take a plug and we plug up her tire, her flat tire. We put air in it. With these folks like here and myself. Because I work for Results Results International as an advocate. Been working with them for a couple of years. And it's been an honor to be in this space, right? To bring people's voices into the space, right? They can't be here but I think one of the big improvements that would be for her was that she would be able to move forward, because when this payment stopped, it's like, her life was like going slower, right? I mean, let's be serious. I mean, when you got a mother of 5 doing the best you can, in this environment, increase rent and all this stuff, and that the small amount of money that she did get, it was really beneficial for her, and I saw that. And I cried with her a lot when those payments stopped because I saw the struggle that she had. So what I'm urging lawmakers is that, you know, pass that expansion for the CTC. Because as you heard, it's a benefit. It's not gonna hurt us to do that, right? As a nation, because we are one of the richest nations in the world, right? Let's be honest, so, but yeah, I just wanna appreciate the results of this opportunity for all the organizations that are up here standing for what's right. I'm gonna leave you with this, no, this year, because I asked her before I left, I was like, what do you want me to tell these folks? What do you want me to say to them? And she told me, well, tell them that she feels like she's getting penalized for doing the right thing, right? She's getting penalized for doing the right thing, that's why, you know, I'm kind of disappointed when people say people wouldn't, and did all the other things with money. No, they took care of themselves, and I saw firsthand that she did good things with that money, right? So, I mean, I'm urging, you know, our legislative leaders to expand this CTC because it is, and as you heard, it's a benefit for not only families that I live with, myself, and other families, but just for our nation. It's a good thing for us to do. So I want to thank the folks who put this together and thank Results for standing, for Michael Santos, who stood with me to help me give across these words that I wanted to express to you today. And I appreciate everything that everybody's doing in this room to make it better for every family in America. So thank you.
Thank you. Hello. We're still here. Thanks for hanging in. My name's Bridget Moix. I'm the General Secretary of Friends Committee on National Legislation. We're a Quaker lobby organization here in Washington. And I want to thank our colleagues for organizing this and the tremendous work all year long on this. The members of Congress who took time between votes to come and speak with us. And most of all, to our colleagues who've come from outside Washington with your stories to share. These stories are so important for Congress to hear right now. This is the end of the legislative session. There's a week left, and they can still make this CTC extension happen. This can still happen, and the voices from communities and from people who are directly impacted are so critical. So please keep sharing those stories. So we are getting close to the end of the program. You've heard already the facts, the figures, the clear solution that is on the table for Congress to end child poverty and how much the CTC has worked and can work. So I'm not going to talk for a long time, but I want to ask some questions, pose some queries. Quakers are simple folk. We don't claim to have all the answers, but we like to ask a lot of questions of Congress. So a few questions. How is it that this Congress allowed one of the most effective tools that we have ever seen to lift millions of kids out of poverty expire a year ago? In the midst of rising inflation, when families were struggling more than ever. We know the CTC wasn't only highly effective at reducing levels of child poverty, as you've heard, it was effective at reducing the racial poverty gap in this country. Black, brown, indigenous kids are more disproportionately affected by poverty than others. And this tool, this policy, really helped begin to close that gap. It's a racial justice tool that was working. It also helps families in every part of this country. I was on the radio doing interviews this morning with folks in Ohio and West Virginia, Minneapolis, California. Rural communities need this benefit, and they're missing out on it now since it expired. Military families, vets families, they need this, and many of them are being left behind without it. So, second question. How and why has this Congress let expansion of the CTC languish for an entire year while millions of kids and families are struggling? There have been opportunities to move this forward all year long. This coalition and the members of Congress you heard from were pushing and pushing. And here we are, once again, at the end of a congressional year, working on must-pass legislation. We hear that a lot in Washington. What is must-pass legislation? Well, it was a huge funding bill for war and weapons that just went through at the end of the session with tens of billions more than the Pentagon even asked for. Congress is able to prioritize that. Why is ending child poverty and extending the child tax credit not an immediate and urgent, must pass legislative priority right now, next week?
Yeah.
We know the answers to these questions. Okay, last question. Why are we not prioritizing the needs of families and children over wealth and corporate interests?
Why?
19 million kids are not receiving the full CTC or even any of it since the expiration. And that's because these families don't make enough income. So work that one around in your head, first of all. So here we are at a moment when we could be helping low-income families, the most vulnerable in our communities, lift out themselves out of poverty, make those contributions to their family that you heard about. And Congress is talking to corporations and big business about the tax breaks that they want. So again, just to underline that message you've heard, we cannot allow Congress to move ahead on corporate tax breaks without giving families and kids a break too. So what is the legacy that this Congress, the 117th Congress, is going to leave? I want to close with a story that I didn't think I'd share, but I've been standing here thinking about it the whole time. When I was a kid, I grew up Catholic, Quaker now, Catholic then, interfaith. My church put on a play at Christmas time every year, Body in the Wheel. And I was a little kid, and there was a scene where the kids got to run to Jesus, and he opened his arms. And I was the littlest kid, so I got the best part, which is that I got to jump into Jesus' arms, and he lifted me up. And what I learned in that moment was not only that I was precious as a child of God, but that every single child in our world is precious in the eyes of God. So all we're asking is that in the next week, Congress remember that too, and extend the child tax credit.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brian Walsh, and I'm the Executive Director of Faith and Giving, which is an association, multi-faith association of national faith communities and national social service, educational, and humanitarian relief and development providers. And we focus on promoting sound policy for charitable giving, for charitable works, and also for addressing poverty, making sure that everyone has their needs adequately met. So many Americans of all faiths understand and they believe that helping families and children thrive is a very important societal good that benefits all of society. The child tax credit is a pro-child, pro-family policy. Even many conservative scholars recognize that this child tax credit is probably the most pro-family, pro-child provision in the tax code. Nothing can fully take the place of strong families and strong communities. However, especially for those who are struggling financially, government plays a vital role. The numerous faith communities and faith leaders with whom my organization, Faith and Giving, works, report that America's children and families are struggling mightily to recover from the many and various blows that they've received from the pandemic and from the other, from the financial crises that we've been through, including inflation, et cetera. Children and families, especially those in the lowest income range, have experienced major disruptions in their jobs, how they manage childcare, and how they ensure their children's education. Now, there are strong arguments to be made that government spending is one of the primary drivers of inflation. Nevertheless, inflation is here, and it operates like a highly regressive tax that hits the lowest income children and families and affects them the worst. So the child tax credit, as I've said, is a pro-child, pro-family policy. It enjoys a 25-year pedigree of bipartisan support in Washington. It was first championed by congressional Republicans and social conservatives. It was doubled by Republicans in 2017. and it was expanded most recently by Democrats in the American Rescue Plan for 2021. It's crucial for America's children and families that Congress has another bipartisan moment on the child tax credit right now. There are many very smart people on both sides of the aisle working in Congress. We need their best creative thinking to reach a bipartisan compromise that will make the CTC more supportive of more children and more families. I'm asking for a modest, speaking only for myself and for my organization, I'm asking for a modest step. And that modest step is that a substantial increase in the dollar amount of the annual child tax credit benefit for each eligible child, and an expansion that will provide more financial help for children and families in the lowest income range. These are the basic requirements to help people recover from the multiple crises and disruptions that they're facing in their lives right now. And it's, of course, low-income children are the most vulnerable. So thank you to everyone here. Thank you for including me, and thank you also for the work that everyone's doing on this super important policy to help America's children and families.
Thank you. My name is Darcy Hirsch. I'm Associate Vice President of Public Affairs of Jewish Federations of North America. I know we're about to wrap soon, but I just want to say how proud I am to stand here with my faith partners advocating for this critical program. And I want to echo what's been said and thank those of you that travel from so far away to tell your personal story, because that makes all the difference. Jewish Federations of North America is an umbrella organization representing 146 local Jewish federations around the country, committed to building flourishing communities. We support a network of health and human service agencies that are guided by our Jewish values that support all, regardless of faith, background, or ability to pay. We supported the expansion of the child tax credit in the American Rescue Plan, and once that passed, we worked together with many of you and the administration to get the word out to those families who were eligible for the checks. We put flyers in school backpacks, we put them in bags at food pantries, we translated the materials into Spanish, Russian, even Yiddish, to make sure that everyone who was eligible was able to take advantage of these checks. And now they've ended. We know that this is good policy. We know that this is historically bipartisan policy. We just did a survey about poverty in the Jewish community, and we found that a significant population is one check away from from economic insecurity. Just one crisis, one bill, one grocery bag of food for your entire family could send them into economic insecurity. It's this program that made a difference. It made a difference to millions of children across the country when it was passed in the American Rescue Plan, and we're urging our lawmakers to include an expanded tax credit in the year-end spending package. Thank you.
Well, it is really my honor to close us today. What a powerful presence amongst these incredible colleagues. And to our friends who have joined us today to share their personal story. My name is Mary Novak, and I serve as Executive Director for Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice. We were founded by Catholic sisters 50 years ago. Like all great religious traditions, my Catholic faith requires me to work to end hunger and poverty. Like the Good Samaritan in the Gospel, we are called to be moved by compassion and love, to serve the needs of our neighbors, not to just be nice. We are called to actually be a good neighbor and to act on it. You've heard that policy is a choice, and child poverty has been the choice. And we have to change that, and this is the opportunity to change it. It's a moral outrage that we have allowed the CTC to lapse when it was such a proven policy. Enough is enough. Child poverty is a stain on the soul of our nation. So it's time, and we together call on Congress to act to end child poverty, and an important step is extending the CTC. So now let us close in prayer the way we began. And this comes from my own religious congregation of sisters, the Congregation of St. Joseph. God of many names, Spirit of love and life, animator of the universe. Open our hearts to one another. Open our eyes to the suffering of your people. Give us ears attentive to the cries of those suffering from poverty, hunger, vulnerability. Give us spirits alert and hearts moved with compassion to act. Inspire us to have the courage to say yes to your call, trusting that nothing is impossible to you. This season, strengthen us to be peace builders, justice bearers, healers, and lovers of all kinds. And we ask that you give a special blessing to Perla, to Stephanie, and to James as they prepare to return to their beloved families, with our gratitude for joining us today. And we pray all of this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.